Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say let's start with coffee first because it's less controversial. And when it comes to coffee, there is evidence that coffee and tea can be beneficial for brain health. But there's a couple things we want to be aware of. One is that not too much coffee or tea. So anything past 5 cups of coffee or tea a day, we're concerned about heart health and that can impact brain health. Um, Will we see benefits? We believe what's happening is that it's coffee or tea that doesn't have things added to it. So we wouldn't want to have the processed ingredients or sugar added. Coffee or tea are high in what we call flavonols, which are anti-inflammatory. And we know inflammation is something we're concerned about for brain health. So anything that can dampen it down is good. But we wouldn't say people need to start drinking coffee and tea for their brain health. It's more under the category of if you enjoy your coffee and tea in the morning and you're not adding things to it, feel good that you're embracing something that we have some emerging evidence is good for brain health, and enjoy your coffee and tea. And the only last caveat there is that if someone's having trouble sleeping, the caffeine content in coffee or tea can keep someone from sleeping. So we want to cut it off around noon if they're having any issues with sleeping because caffeine has a long half-life. It just stays in our body a long time. But if you're a coffee lover or a tea lover, good news that there can be some brain health benefits there. Just keep it just coffee and tea. And don't try not to add things to it. And then when it comes to alcohol, bit more controversial. On one hand, alcohol is included in the MIND diet and Mediterranean-like diets in moderate amounts. Usually it's included as like 1 glass of wine a day. There's controversy there. On one hand, that alcohol is surrounded by a diet that is whole natural foods, most of the time, and possibly that's playing a role, that the overall diet is beneficial for brain health. When it comes to alcohol, we're concerned about anything past moderate that can damage brain cells or specifically damage the connections between the brain cells. And that's a big concern for memory. It's similar in the sense we wouldn't say people need to start drinking alcohol for their brain health, even though there is some marketing that seems to push in that direction, but there is not evidence for that. But when it comes to the conflicting studies, when it comes to alcohol, we believe that we talked a lot about, over the last things that we've talked about together that we've talked in general terms, things that are easily adoptable. But when it comes to alcohol, we want to put that in the category of more personalized, more individualized, because individuals might have underlying conditions or even family histories where certain conditions that run in their family might raise the risk of issues with brain health with moderate amounts of alcohol. So we would encourage people to have that conversation with their doctor and make sure if they want to have moderate alcohol, that it's right for them. And just to be careful that this is something we want to put in the category of let's make it a little bit more personalized as opposed to a general recommendation. A lot of those studies are done by specific alcohol companies. They're trying to push their alcoholic beverage. But what we do see is that alcohol that is less processed. So the types of alcohol that would have less of the additives and the preservatives, which is a similar thing that we're seeing with food. So that's really the only issue that we know of. It's possible that red wine has a higher content of these flavonols that we talked about that are anti-inflammatory, but it's really hard to tease out if that's exactly what is the brain health benefit that we do see in some studies, or if it's some other mechanism. So at this point, we would say just want to be aware of the minimizing or eliminating the additives and the preservatives. Yeah, so that's a good question too. So where we see the research there is that if you enjoy your work, then that can be beneficial to keep working. If you don't like your work or you can't stand it, that's not beneficial. So what we actually see is that having purpose or feeling like you're accomplishing a goal or you're mentoring people, you have responsibilities, that's what's beneficial for brain health is that really at its essence is the feeling of purpose. And that can be found with work or with volunteering or learning new things or other activities. So it's really just that self-assessment of if I love what I do, then and you can keep doing it, that's great. If for reasons why you don't enjoy what you're doing or for other reasons why you can't do it anymore, finding things that you do enjoy and give you that feeling of fulfillment, purpose, challenge, that's what's good for the brain. So we can find that in work or not work, which is good news. That's a good question. So scientifically, we actually have evidence that if you follow all of them, it's better. And there is evidence that we actually see studies where the more of these interventions or lifestyle factors that we do, the lower our risk becomes. And so when we talk about lowering risk for Alzheimer's and dementia, anywhere from 30 to 60%, part of that is, complex based upon genetics and other factors, but part of it is how many of the lifestyle factors that we're adopting. And something to consider is, if someone's doing some of these already, then just embrace, double down, feel good that you're doing them, and then think about adding one, and then adding another, because it can be very hard to adopt habits if you look at this and go, oh no, I have to do, 5 things differently all of a sudden. That can be daunting and can lead to, not sustaining. So something about, just thinking about, okay, pick one of them. If it's walking, I'm just going to try to walk, a few minutes a day, a few minutes extra a day, build up and adopt that habit and get it so it's something that I consistently do, and then take that habit and add to it so that you say, I'm going to walk with a friend or listen to a podcast while I'm walking. So we can build upon these habits in a way that we can start putting them together. And then that walking in the morning will help with the sleep at night. So it's nice that these can be interconnected, but we want to encourage people to do any of them. But at the same time, the studies do strongly suggest that the more we do, the better. Yeah, that's a good one too. And that's another one that can be controversial and conflicting data. The latest studies on omega-3 that came out about a week ago really found no benefit for the supplements. And that's something we are seeing quite consistently. And we believe that part of that is the quality of the supplements. Another aspect of that is that it's not just the supplement. It's how that omega-3 works in our diet and how things work together. It's not just one nutrient or one ingredient. It's how these work synergistically. So at this point, unless somebody has an underlying condition in which omega-3 can be beneficial for, which would be, under the care of a physician, there isn't much of a benefit to taking that we see for brain health when it comes to taking the supplements of omega-3. But we do see a lot of benefit in the food. So thinking about, the salmon, nuts, avocados, all the things that have the healthy fatty acids are really good for our brain health. And then if someone wants to do the supplements, that's really something they want to discuss with their doctor, with the latest research suggesting that the supplements aren't as beneficial as we once thought, but the food is very beneficial. And when it comes to vitamin D or any of the supplements, that we could go down the list, really the answer is that any deficiency of any of these factors, vitamin D, B12, are very concerning for brain health. So supplements can be used, but we really want to follow the progression of first, once or twice a year, get a blood test. That's really important for our brain health, is just make sure everything is at optimal levels for many different factors that we can test with a blood test. If anything is deficient, then first think about, what am I eating? Can I optimize with my diet for that specific nutrient that I'm not getting enough of? Can I make some changes? Then retest with the blood test. If it still is deficient, that can happen. Some people have different absorptions, and even though they're eating large quantities of certain types of food, and then supplements can be used. But even with vitamin D, for example, which was, a bit of a craze lately and in the past few years, if people take too much vitamin D, that can actually have significant negative health consequences and actually negatively impact brain health. So we just want to have people use supplements if they need them, specific supplements like vitamin D or B12. If they don't need them and they're taking too much of them, that can be a problem too. So that's where that testing, making sure you need it, and if you don't need it, we don't want to be taking it, and prioritizing food is really the flow that we're seeing is the most optimal for brain health. Yeah, that's another good one. So it's hard to bunch those all together. And because we don't have as much research on them, a lot of the research is done by the companies selling those products. So on one hand, playing a game, if you're enjoying it and you feel like you're learning new things, that's a good thing. What we just want to be careful of is the claims that are made by those companies in some cases that are overstepping what those games can do. And instead, we want to think about, if somebody enjoys those games, that can be part of a cross-training your brain program that we talked about. That can be something that can be done, a couple times a week, and enjoy the game and have fun. And if it's social, that's even better. And you're learning new things, that's all great. But the evidence that it really carries over to other aspects of memory is not there as much as being reported. So instead, we would say, if you enjoy doing them, keep doing them. If you don't enjoy those games, you don't need to play those games. You can just learn new things and make it part of an overall week of different types of activities that you can do for your brain that are beneficial. Yeah, so we want to move away from the idea of somebody saying, I'm just playing the games and I'm good. And that's all I need to do. So that's where we want to be very careful and think about just the as we come back to that previous question, is how do we put all of these things together and not just focus on one? And that can be part of learning new things, but not all of learning new things. We know that day-to-day brain health, mental health, long-term brain health, one of our biggest concerns now is feeling lonely or isolated. It can raise the risk of memory loss significantly. It can raise the risk of depression. So it's not about the number of, friends that you have and you need to make a ton of friends. It's more that what is the quality of those friendships? And it can be just, phone calls, texts, meeting for lunch, taking a walk with a friend. But when we're social, we do know that we're learning new things and being engaged and learning new things is critical for brain health. So part of the learning new things is being social, and that's important for brain health. That's a really powerful way we do learn. And so we want to be aware that that's important, the learning new things aspect, and also the feelings of connectedness and not feeling isolated are important for brain health. That relates to aspects of how our immune system works, which is important for brain health too. So if we're feeling lonely or isolated, we just want to take action to, feel more connected, and make sure that's a priority. We don't want to reach a point where we look around and we think, oh, wait, I haven't invested in friendship, and now I'm all of a sudden trying to make friends, because not only is it good, day to day and important for our brain health, but we want to make sure that we have those relationships, in the future too. Yeah, that's a big one. That's one we're seeing a lot on, TikTok and Instagram, and it falls under the category of heat and cold have benefits in terms of relaxation, in terms of anti-inflammation, but whether or not people need to be jumping into like a freezing pool or they need to be, sweating it out in a sauna, there's evidence for those things, but there's not strong evidence at this point. I mean, it's something that we need to research more before making a strong recommendation. So the things we want to be aware of is that too hot or too cold can be a risk for individuals who have any issues with heart health or any underlying issues with heart health that they might not be aware of. So if somebody's going to do those, especially extreme levels of hot and cold, really talk to your doctor first and make sure that that your heart and your cardiovascular health can handle those extremes. In terms of using, icing and heat for injuries or for recovery, that's been, we have strong evidence that that's beneficial. So those things can absolutely be utilized. But if someone's going to take the next step and do cold plunges or, very hot saunas, it's on the list of things people can try if they feel good. That's things to embrace. But we want to be careful in overstating what we understand scientifically. I see videos and I see things written about, oh, it's activating this system in the brain, and we don't really know that yet. And sometimes you can take something and put some science behind it that sort of fits, and it sounds good. But at this point, we would say we don't truly understand if there's a very strong long-term brain health benefit. I mean, if it makes you feel good and you're enjoying it, that's something to think about and to utilize. But we just want to be careful that we're not going to extremes or doing things that are not necessary or dangerous. Yeah, that's an important point and a big one. And it's so it comes back to this idea of feeling, connected, not feeling lonely, not feeling isolated, and having feelings of love. And love is something that we understand how that works in the brain. And there's different types of love when it comes to brain health. And love has a beneficial impact on our brain. And that can come from, love between people. There can be love for a dog or a cat. That's also beneficial too. But those feelings of love, They release feelings of oxytocin, which is closeness, and that's also feeling of connectedness. Endorphins, which is good for the brain. So a lot of feel-good chemicals coming from love and prioritizing, those relationships is important. And it's also, interesting to think about how pets can provide that too. We do see that when people look at their pets and their dogs, and the dog looks back at them, there's these sites where they actually have trained dogs to go in brain scanners, and the dog, when they look back at their human companion, they have genuine feelings of love too. Similar aspects of their brain are activated. So your dog is not just looking for a treat. There is actual feelings there, and so those things are beneficial for brain health and for feelings of closeness and attachment and all things that are good. And what we believe is happening with the pet interaction is, well, dogs, get people outside, which is beneficial. In many cases, that getting people to take walks with their dogs is really great. Fresh air. But what we see in general is that the studies, it's just any pet. And what we believe a pet does is it gives us a sense of bonding, purpose, which is really good. Taking care of something is really good, even if it's a plant. I mean, taking care of a plant is actually good for your brain. That's why gardening is a really good activity for multiple reasons for brain health. But it's really about that sense of purpose, and having that sense of purpose in one's life that a pet can provide. Yeah, that's a good one. So it's not one or the other. It's a mix. It's somewhere in the middle, and can be both. So social media is very much a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can be used to learn new things. It can be used to connect us to other people, which is all good. It can absolutely introduce us to new things and learning new things, which is great. The concern with social media is that it can keep us from getting outside, can keep us from actually interacting with human beings, which is really important. It can keep us from sleeping at night, because these devices that, the social media is on, and social media platforms themselves they've hired brain scientists to figure out ways that we can't put these things down. They tap into parts of our brain that make it so we just can't help but keep scrolling and keep looking for the next essentially hit of dopamine that is allowing our brain to just feel good when we get this next piece of information, which in doses is good, but it can exhaust the brain if it's just happening all the time and we're not doing other things that allow us to take care of our brain. So with social media, we would say if you're enjoying it, then it can be part of someone's life, and they can use it in moments and with boundaries that I'm going to check it and I'm going to engage in it and then I'm going to put it away. If you don't enjoy it and it makes you feel bad, or it makes you feel like everyone else is, riding a jet ski while drinking champagne every moment of the day, and there's a lot of, the grass seems to be greener in everybody else's Instagram posts. But the idea is that if it's making you feel bad, then it's absolutely not something that's needed for brain health, and it's best to just put it away and not check it if it's not good. So it can be used for good if it makes you feel good in doses, but if it is something that's not making you feel good, there's no need to be a part of it. Social media can make us feel connected to people, but it also can make us feel more lonely and isolated. And it's part of that is perspective, part of it is what we're looking at. And those feelings, what's happening in our brain absolutely has an impact on what's happening in our body. So our brain is releasing chemicals based upon what we're seeing that is impacting, our heart rate, our blood pressure, which are then feeding back on our brain health. That's a good question. It's complicated, because on one hand, individuals is different than the population. So, there's always the stories of, I know somebody who did everything wrong. And, my uncle, I always hear these stories. My uncle lived to, 102, but he smoked and he did this and he did that. And, how do you explain that? And then someone else on the other side of a very tragic story of someone who seemed to do everything right, and they still suffered from, some brain health condition or other disease. And so we always see what we call the outliers, the people who, for reasons of genetics or environmental factors, they're on the fringes. But for the general population, it's a complex combination of lifestyle and genetics. And the hopeful side of this is that in the vast majority of cases, it's not just genes, that what we do in our lifestyle has a profound and significant impact. And so that's something that we've really learned over the last couple of years, and is that we can, if we have genes that raise risk, in a vast majority of cases, we can bring that risk down. And we see that consistently in studies by the things that we're talking about, and other aspects that we could go into, but the core element of things that we've talked about. And so that provides us a lot of hope, and thinking about this idea that as a population and even as individuals, we don't know exactly where we lie on that spectrum, and most people lie in the middle. And so we want to do things that we can leverage so that we can, lower any risk based upon any genetics that we've inherited. Because we all, most people have inherited something that can raise risk for any number of ailments. So we want to think about how do we bring that risk back down, or leverage against it based upon things that we can control. Wow, that's a good question. So a couple things. One is family history. I had some family members that dealt with some issues with dementia, and that was so tragic to see that motivated me to dig deeper. Part of it was also just the amazing, fascinating aspect of the brain, and the more we learn about it, the more we're solving some mysteries in terms of brain health, and we're taking and learning from. What's really, I think, most exciting to me is that by uncovering the science, it's leading to simple solutions in many cases. And so we can connect the dots and say, oh, we now understand this is how the brain works, and this provides a solution to help us, sleep or manage our stress. And in many cases, it's things that are doable and easy to do. So as complicated as the science can be at times, it seems to translate to some simple steps that we can take, which I find really, fascinating, interesting, and really hopeful. Science is providing us new insights, but it's also validating things like, some of the questions were like, what about love? It's like, we know love is good, but now we know why love is good, or why we want to prioritize social connections, or why we want to do certain things that in our modern life can easily be deprioritized or fall by the wayside or be replaced by, a lot of scrolling, or a lot of, things that are not as beneficial or things that are disrupting our sleep. So it's a powerful reminder to say, oh, I need to get back to certain priorities, or certain things that we've heard about that we might have ignored, or new insights of things. Oh, wow, I could do that, and that's very helpful for my brain health. So there's been a revolution in our understanding of brain health just in the last few years that's really propelled our understanding forward.
The views and opinions expressed herein are those of Marc Milstein, who is not affiliated with Hartford Funds. If you are concerned about your brain health or cognitive function, it's a good idea to speak with your doctor or a healthcare professional who can evaluate your cognitive function and provide recommendations for management and treatment if necessary.